Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unlocking a high-stakes engineering puzzle, and it is hiding in plain sight right inside modern farming. Seriously, when you look at an orchard, you might just see rows of beautiful fruit trees. But behind the scenes, there's a massive shift happening. It's a fundamental shift in how we actually think about time, money, and human effort. So let's dive right in. Now, this is the existential threat that so many growers are facing right at this exact moment. Can traditional orchards even survive if costs just keep skyrocketing? Across so many farming regions today, wages are rising, and labor shortages are, well, they're growing fast. The really harsh reality here is that a beautiful, incredibly high-yielding orchard can still go totally bankrupt if it simply requires too much physical labor to maintain. And that brings us to a really surprising secret. For a lot of orchard owners, their absolute biggest expense isn't the fertilizer. It's not the water. Heck, it's not even the heavy machinery. It is labor, human time. Think about it. Every single season, workers have to physically move through these orchards, pruning branches, thinning out the fruit, spraying trees, mowing rows, harvesting crops, and carrying these super heavy loads, often under intense, blazing heat. That time and that physical strain, that's the ultimate profit killer. And it's squeezing orchard profits harder and harder every single year.
Okay, let's move into section 1, the hidden cost of farming.
So to really understand how the industry is fighting back, we can't just throw money at flashy solutions, right? We actually have to redesign the work itself. Let's look at the historical pattern of orchard farming to see exactly why. For decades, the baseline approach worked perfectly well. You plant large trees, you space them widely apart, you use ladders for pruning and harvesting, and you bring in massive seasonal crews during peak periods. But while that system worked for a long time, it basically created hidden inefficiencies everywhere. I mean, think about it. Workers climbing ladders waste huge amounts of time just constantly moving up and down. It's a great look for romanticizing farming in the movies, sure, but it is absolutely terrible for your back and your budget. Large tree canopies need way more pruning, harvesting is much slower, and managing tall, widely spaced trees heavily increases the risk of accidents. Moving on to section 2, shrinking trees to save time. So, how exactly do you fix a fundamentally inefficient setup? Well, you zoom out and you hit this massive aha moment for the entire industry: high-density planting systems. Instead of giant trees, growers started using dwarf or semi-dwarf rootstocks. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean more fruit per individual tree, but it does mean more manageable fruit per acre. The tree stays smaller, the rows become incredibly organized, and the canopies are just far easier to manage. Suddenly, workers can prune faster, harvest faster, and spray more efficiently, often without even needing to use a ladder at all. It's a real game changer. On one side, you've got this romantic, traditional past. Giant canopies, terrifyingly tall ladders, massive pruning, and really high physical strain. But on the other side, you've got the engineered, pragmatic future. Dwarf rootstocks, zero ladders, fast pruning, and highly organized canopies. That single shift to high-density systems dramatically reduces the amount of time spent per acre. And remember, time is exactly where those high labor costs live. All right, section 3, the cumulative time trap. Now, fixing the size of the tree is really only the beginning, because labor is ultimately just time, and time can absolutely trap you. Take pruning, for example. It's one of the biggest labor expenses in fruit production. Orchards often unknowingly create their own pruning problems. When trees are poorly managed early on, they produce these dense, tangled canopies, and those require massive, super time-consuming corrections down the line. Growers can literally spend years fighting tree structure issues that could have been completely prevented from the start, with better training, things like ensuring strong branch angles, a simplified structure, and better light penetration. A well-trained tree is just fundamentally faster to manage every single year afterward. So why does this matter so much? Well, because orchard inefficiency almost always hides inside tiny, repeated actions. Imagine a seemingly meaningless inefficiency. Let's say, taking just 5 extra seconds to reposition a ladder, or having to carefully reach past a tangled branch to snip a piece of fruit, maybe even fighting that branch a bit like it owes you money. 5 extra seconds per tree sounds totally meaningless, right? But imagine those 5 little seconds repeated 50,000 times. That is the compounding financial devastation of a bad workflow applied across an entire harvest. Because labor savings are cumulative, those small, seemingly tiny inefficiencies, when repeated across thousands of trees, quickly become absolutely enormous financial burdens.
Which brings us to Section 4, the truth about farm tech.
When folks hear about these compounding labor problems, their minds usually jump straight to technology. And to be fair, there is an incredible volume of modern innovation out there today. I mean, we have mechanical hedgers that drastically reduce pruning time. We've got automated drip irrigation systems with moisture sensors you can monitor right from your smartphone, which would have seemed like pure sci-fi a generation ago. We've got health monitoring drones observing from above, GPS-guided spraying equipment improving precision, and even experimental AI robotic harvesters using computer vision to spot ripe fruit. It's honestly incredibly exciting stuff. But, and this is a big but, here is the crucial grounded reality check that so many people ignore. Technology does not automatically save money. A machine only reduces labor cost if it improves efficiency more than the cost of owning, maintaining, and operating the thing. That whole calculation shifts entirely depending on your specific orchard size, your crop type, local wages, and labor availability. Poorly planned, super expensive automation can actually ruin a smaller farm if it isn't implemented perfectly.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Basic workflow beats bad automation. For a lot of orchards, surprisingly basic management improvements provide way better returns than expensive robotics. Simple things, like organizing your tools properly, reducing unnecessary walking, standardizing harvest bins, or using moving platform systems to get crews continuously through the rows instead of constantly moving ladders around. Believe it or not, these basic workflow tweaks quietly save hundreds of labor hours.
And finally, Section 5, engineering the modern orchard. This all brings us to the overarching philosophy required for future survival. Orchards are biological systems, folks. They are not factories. A factory is rigid. You can easily replace workers with machines to pump out identical outputs. But in an orchard, the weather changes constantly, pests evolve, trees behave differently every single season, and fruit quality varies. Human judgment remains incredibly, vitally valuable. The goal here is not to completely eliminate human workers. No, it is to reduce their unnecessary strain and drastically improve their working conditions. The absolute most successful orchards understand that this efficiency begins long before a single worker steps foot in the field. It begins on a drafting table. Design choices dictate labor. Your tree spacing, canopy architecture, rootstock selection, your irrigation layout, equipment access, and workflow planning. Every single one of these decisions either creates immediate efficiency or it creates a future labor problem just waiting to bite you down the line. And this is the major mindset shift we really need to take away today. Modern farming is systems engineering. The orchard is no longer just a random collection of trees. Instead, you have to think of it as a highly interconnected production system where every single design choice directly impacts movement, time, cost, and overall productivity. As labor shortages inevitably continue to grow worldwide, this systems engineering mindset is what will ultimately determine profitability. It leaves us with a pretty powerful question to consider about the future of agriculture. Will the farms that survive long-term be the ones just working the hardest, or the ones designing smarter systems from the very beginning? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this completely changes how you look at the fruit in your local grocery store. Keep learning and keep asking great questions.